I'm going to talk about one tiny, tiny little thing. But I think it's an important thing, and I'll tell you why I think it's important. And it's about ending your talk. You know, as I said, I go to a lot of talks. I like going to talks, and I'm enjoying them. They're fantastic. You know, someone has got uh, diagrams and explanations of something. This is why rotate is great. Or they have code and they're zipping along. They're talking about the future stuff that's going to happen, and then they bump into this slide and they stop talking. Or even worse, they bump into this slide. I've seen this on more than one occasion. This isn't better, right? And what happens when this slide comes up is the speaker kind of stops talking. And then sometimes they seem like it really caught them by surprise. They were in a great mood. They were cranking along. Everything was fine. And then up comes the slide that says questions or the whatever. And they go, well, I guess that's all I have. That seems to be it. And like the audience doesn't get their cue to clap. A couple people, kind of try it, but other people don't pick it up because the speaker's still talking and saying, "Oh, I seem to have time for a few questions." And so people are like, "I guess we'll clap when the questions are over." And it's like, who wrote this deck? You wrote this deck on purpose. You should know this deck, and you should have an ending that is not just, "Well, I don't seem to have any more content to say to you." A couple of people have alluded to these moments that you get in a talk. You can't count on them, but there are these moments. So one of them is the opening. There's probably another whole talk about how to start a talk. A lot of people do it badly. I like to start with the conclusion. This isn't a scientific paper where we're going to lay out all the evidence, and then on the very last slide, we're going to reveal the exciting conclusion. I like to actually start with the conclusion. But somehow you've got to get their attention to pay mind to what you are saying for the next however many minutes you're going to do it. And so you deliberately structure a great moment in there. And Patricia just gave us a reprise of a really life-changing talk for a lot of people, where she opened with these questions. Have you ever? And wow, that got people's attention. That got people thinking about the problem. A strong opening is amazing. If you are lucky, if the stars align, you may get a moment during a talk. Sean famously, this is a rotate. And the first time he said it, he said, "This is obviously a rotate." And it was so not obvious to me that I literally looked around the room at the other people with me to make sure that I was not the only one who didn't think that was obviously a rotate at all. At Meeting C++, I had a series of bullets on a slide, and the last bullet spoke to me so much that I repeated it on a slide of its own. And when I did, I saw all the phones come up to take a picture. Is it important to your ego that you're good at a complicated language? You may have an amazing code example. You may have this really brilliant point that people are going to share on Twitter, that people are going to talk to that one sentence out of your talk over and over. You can't be sure you will have a moment like that in your talk. You can try, but you can't be sure. Even in a great talk, there might not be one. But you get your closing, right? You're guaranteed your closing. So you want to structure that closing to be one of those moments. And the most important thing about that is to end on purpose. To not just trail off, to not just say, "Well, I guess I'm going to stop talking now." To have a deliberate ending. I believe that every talk should have a call to action. You don't have to label it call to action. It's not wrong if you do, but lately I've been putting "what do I want you to do" at the top of a slide. If you've written a great library and you're coming to give a talk about "my library is a great library," then your call to action is probably "use my library. It's great." But it could be "join the team to help maintain this library." You know what it is, right? Or if you've discovered a lovely technique like Claire's code highlighting technique, then the call to action is, "Hey, you should highlight your code, make your code easier to read on slides, and I've shown you how to do it. Sometimes someone, especially if the talk has like disaster or fiasco or whatever in the title, their call to action is the opposite. They want you to stop doing something. And like, you don't need to hide this. This is the point. This is why you came to talk for 5 minutes or 15 minutes or 60 or 90 minutes, so that people would start doing a thing. So take some time and figure out what that is that you want. But then you should also have a closing sentence. You're going to signal that you're done. And there's several parts to this. One is your actual sentence, which I'll talk about in a minute. But there's also a particular inflection, a particular rhythm of your words that says, I've reached the end of the sentence, I've reached the end of the paragraph, I've reached the end of the chapter, you know? And they all lived happily ever after. That rhythm, we recognize it immediately. It's a little more pauses between the words and a little kind of down drop. Everybody knows that's the end thing. So after you say your closing sentence, you pause for a couple of beats, and then you say, thank you. Believe me, they will applaud. That is, everybody knows the cue. There's a script. When you do that and then you say, thank you, they all go, yay. Even if you weren't really that good, they're still going to do that, okay, for sure, because they now know they're done. Now you can put the resources up behind you, or you can put the questions up, you know, slide, Q&A, whatever, something like that for them to look at while you're answering questions, because you don't necessarily want to be sitting on your call to action slide. Don't read it out. Don't say, so I have a blog, it's here, and you can see that I'm sometimes on Twitter and da-da-da. Just leave it there. Maybe say, here's some resources that you might find helpful. But let's come back to that closing sentence. And that is why everybody should, whatever it is you think everybody should. So please join me in doing something or another more often, or no longer doing something, or whatever, you know, you want them to do something. So please join me in doing that, right? So you see, you really can, whatever it is. But one of my tricks, which is working pretty well for me, is to have a talk that has a title that the title itself makes a good closing sentence. Then what I can do when I get to the end is I can press home, and we'll go back to the screen where the title is in great big letters, along with my contact information, and everyone will know we're done. And that, my friends, is how you end a talk. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate.